everybody. Morning and welcome to Mystics MMOs. I'm your host, Mystic Raven. Came on a little early because I gotta leave a little earlier. But today's episode, what other tanks don't, I do, and here's why. So I get trolls. The last troll got blocked, but a lot of tanks don't like to macro provoke or ultimatum, right? I do. And this is why I do it. Because read the tooltip first. Gesture threateningly placing yourself at the top of the target's enmity list, meaning threat, aggro. It puts you at the top. So when you're chain pulling or you're in a rotation, it literally becomes next to impossible to peel that target from me. Almost next to impossible. This allows me an allotted time to naturally build the rotation to generate additional threat so it doesn't pull from me onto one of my DPS. Typically, what happens with DPS, they don't use threat reduction abilities. They don't put it within their rotation, or they don't macro it, and you're supposed to. You're supposed to drop threat, right? That's part of your job as DPS, but majority of the times they don't do it. I can't afford to let something go past and kill my healer because heals take, if a healer starts healing or buffing, that goes on top before DPS can even start. So if a healer shields me, enmity is automatically like that, grabs threat a lot faster than DPS. Once DPS goes, then that can be taking away threat for me as a tank. My job as a tank is to hold aggro. But the first thing I need to do is establish dominant aggro, right? And that's where provoke and ultimatum come in opening or chain pulling. Another thing that's really nice is control. And the way I set up the macros, once it burns off the GCD, I can reapply the effect. So it's not built into my typical aggro or my typical rotation. But at times, depending when I'm first building, I will put it in the rotation until I get other abilities that have larger enmity pulling capability. And then I'll put it on a more control situation. So for example, my macros. So you'll see here the first thing I have is what I call a single aggro. And it's my Tomahawk. So I put provoke in front of Tomahawk. Tomahawk is a range pull, but so is provoke. So when I'm chain pulling, the first thing I do is take the closest target, more than likely that the DPS is also going to target. I provoke that. Then I can switch the target and then hit my Tomahawk and group them up, right? As I'm sweeping them up or chain pulling. Once I do that, then I can, establish my typical rotation depending if it's a single target or an AoE. Then when I come in, you'll also see on my AoE, I have ultimatum built in. Because once I swoop everything up, I go throughout, I stack two effects. So I put Rampart for reducing the damage into Convalescence. Why? Because I'm taking a tremendous amount of damage from the first hit from what I'm gathering. So I want to increase that HP recovery via healing magic. So when the healer's healing me, it's easier to keep me healed. And Rampart is going to reduce that any additional damage by 20%. So I'm buffing myself up for the larger pull, keeping my healing capability at a high, and then I'm asserting the dominant aggro control. Once those drop off, and they will, then I can use the raw intuition, which is going to increase my dodge effect. Okay, so that's how I'm able to manage that, and I'll be demonstrating that today in today's stream. So a lot of times tanks are like, oh, you're not supposed to do that. I've been doing this a long time, very, very long, and I can assure you that you do that. What they don't, I do. If you don't want to do it, hey, that's fine. That's completely your thing. But for me, I'm very good at what I do, and this is why I do it. So, now I always want to keep Defiance up. Now, Defiance is going to increase my max HP. It's also while reducing my damage and my HP recovery. Okay, which is another boon to me. But a lot of people don't realize that when I'm certain actions under the effect of Defiance also increases the beast gauge, so I get faster rate, and then it increases my parry ability. So when I use anticipation or raw intuition, I'm getting to be able to dodge those at a lot better effect with the warrior.
Leave this to me.
Once I see that ability go off, then I'm going to go ahead and run it. Now I have aggro. Now I'm going to swoop them up. Then I just switch and keep to a single target. Every once in a while I'll use that overpowered on the macro. It's just that simple, man. And see how DPS is out in front of me? That's their melee. That's what they're going to do. Now I'll run it again. Now you see the ultimatum. Now once that's set, I have complete aggro. Nothing else is going to get hit as long as I stay out of the AoEs. See? Then I just switch my targets on single, generating that. Easy peasy. Something's wrong there. Gotta check that. No heals. Yeah, that's fun. close. Alright. Gotta check that. Oh, that's right. There's why. I was redoing it, took that one out. Alright. First time for the healer, that's fine. It happens. All good. Now see, once I have that, you see it was about to turn. Once I get in my combo, it just sets everything up. It's controllable. I can come off the global cooldown now. I have my tomahawk. I can come in here. I'm gonna go back. Done and done. Remember, Ultimatum has a AoE radius associated. See, once again, good DPS would never start DPSing. They would wait. Always. I'm gonna hit that brawling position. Bingo, baby.
Ready?
I've just been doing this a really long time. Really long time. Not on this game, per se, but in general, yeah. I use the main tanks, so... one missed. Wipe. To an edge. It's a wipe. Pointless. Just pointless. It happens. It happens.
You underestimate me! Out of my way! As one!
This day you die!
Shit. Woof. The ninja. Man, that's pretty much how you do it, man. You know, at the end of the day, whatever, it's like, look, if you don't feel comfortable putting a instant taunt macroed or opening with it, that's your prerogative. I know there's a GCD applied to the effect. I know that when I'm using set effect, that I have, you know, a 40-second cooldown, right? I already know that. I already know I have a 90-second on my ultimatum. My ultimatum's never going to be used in a boss fight ever. If I'm an off tank, I'm never going to use an ultimatum. Ever. Why? Because it has a chance to pull the boss if it's too close. I can't afford to pull the ads and the boss. So if I'm doing trash pulls or chain pulls, ultimatum is just that much more appealing because I know I have 90 seconds within the pull to open from one pull to the next, right? I just know, like, okay, I have a 90-second window. Also, the same thing with provoke. Provoke is just a nice controllable feature on an initial pull. Now, when I'm on a boss, it's off because what's the chances of me using a ranged ability on as an MT? You know, when am I going to use Tomahawk as an MT once the boss is already established? It doesn't, right? It just doesn't. So it's controllable. It's just manageable. That's what I keep trying to reintegrate to people when you're pulling as a tank, right? Next thing you need to know is how damage is going to be applied on every pull, right? And how to control that within the macro sequence. And once you can get this down and you understand the intricate design of a tank, you can, you know, efficiently set up your macros to be better suited for every pull or almost every scenario. So that's what I'm trying to reintegrate to people. It's like, yes, if you don't feel comfortable, you don't have to. I'm not saying anything, and not anything is mandatory. Hell, you don't need to macro anything if you don't want to. So take it with a grain of salt, man. You know, if you wanna macro, if you feel comfortable as a tank and you feel like you have more control, at the end of the day, if you get the job done, then who can complain? It's not like I'm walking up to the DPS in this game and being like, did you use diversion? Did you reduce your threat enmity? your threat or your enmity, it's not like I'm questioning that. Because if I can hold it, I don't care, right? If I already have the aggro and it's not getting pulled from me, I don't care if they're using it or not. But as a tank, I need to be aware that there's chances that they're not going to utilize that ability or that effect. And I need to be prepared for that. So I need to compensate for anything that the DPS healers aren't utilizing or the other tank might be putting in their situation. We also have abilities that do threat drops like shrink. So if we're tank swapping, I can go ahead and drop my enmity by 25 or redivert it by 25% to the other tank if we're tank switching. So that stacks more enmity to him, and then he can use other abilities to regrab or be the dominant tank. That's where provoke also comes into play. So I shrink my threat and I place it onto the other tank, and now what? Because it's since it's controllable, and if it's off of the GCD, then he can go ahead and weave it in and then start his combo. So it's just that simple, guys. So I want to, once again, I want to reintegrate that and just tell people, hey man, just be aware, okay? Just heads up. Well, anyways, guys, I'm gonna let you guys go. Once again, I'm Mystic Raven, this is Mystic's MMOs, and as always, thank you guys. Have a nice day.